Coming to question number 11, P appoints A as his agent to sell his estate. A, on looking over the estate before selling it, finds the existence of good quality granite mine on the estate which is unknown to P. देखो अभी हमने केस किया था very similar. A buys the estate himself after informing P that A wishes to buy. See over here, A has played the game really safe after informing P that he wishes to buy. So he gained the consent of the principal regarding his intention to purchase the place, the asset. So over here, gaining the consent was one of the things that we discussed. He did gain the consent for himself, but conceals the existence. Did he discuss or did he acquaint the principal with all the material facts regarding the transaction? The answer is no. There was concealment of the existence of granite mine. P allows A to buy the estate in ignorance of the existence of mine. State giving the reasons and brief the rights of P, the principal, as against the agent. So section 215 will come into being, and the principal has a right to repudiate the contract, to cancel the contract. Right? Repudiate the contract. Because yes, he gained the consent, but he didn't acquaint, the agent didn't acquaint the principal of all the material facts. बहुत important. What should be your answer if A had informed P about the existence of mine before he purchased the estate, but after 2 months he sold the estate for 1 lakh? See, उसके बाद उसका 1 करोड़ का फायदा हो, 5 करोड़ का फायदा हो, the principal cannot do anything if both the criteria are met. What was criteria number 1 about informing the principal? If the agent wants to act in his own name, he should acquaint the principal of all the material facts and moreover gain the consent. Consent भी ले लिया, and if he also acquainted the principal of all the material fact, that is the granite mine, existence of granite mine, then obviously उसके बाद if the principal is still agreed and gone ahead with the transaction, then the principal cannot repudiate the transaction, right? So यहाँ आंसर आ जाएगा सेकेंड में, cannot repudiate nor claim profits. From what we have learnt till now, एक बात ध्यान में रखने लायक है, सेकेंड पार्ट में अगर आप जाएं, if in second part it has been told that he sold the estate at a profit of 1 lakh, right? And he concealed regarding the granite mine, then can that 1 lakh be claimed? The answer would be a yes. So keep that in mind कि अगर उसने consent लिया है but he has concealed the fact and sold it to a third party, you cannot repudiate the contract. But yes, as section 216, the principal can claim that secret profit of 1 lakh. Very clear. Now going on to question number 12, briefly explain the circumstances under which an agent may be held personally liable. Now this is pretty massive, guys. Agent being personally liable. Generally the agent is never personally liable, but coming on to question number 12, the personal liability of the agent. So we'll start our list over here. This is pertaining to question number 12. Then liability of agent is pretty huge. See, the agent generally cannot be held liable for transactions entered into by him. The agent, पहले एक नोट लिखते हैं, the agent cannot be held liable for transactions entered by him on behalf of the principal. On behalf of the principal, right? See, because the agent is a mere connecting link between the principal and the third party, so the agent cannot be held liable for the transactions entered into by him. Now, coming to scenarios, they've asked us in question that when does the liability of the agent exist? So the liability of the agent would be liable under the following exceptional circumstances. Under the following exceptional circumstances, right? So now we'll begin with our list of exceptional circumstances, right? Some of the points are pretty easy, some will take some doing, some time, some effort, right? एक पहली बात समझ लीजिए that the agent is the connecting link between the principal and the third party and he cannot be made personally liable, he cannot enforce the contract, but yes, under certain exceptional circumstances the agent can be held liable. So what is the first one? When the agent expressly agrees, when the agent agrees to be liable, साथ साथ नोट बनाइए, liable for the contract, right? See, generally the agent is not liable, but at times he may expressly agree to be liable. One of the examples, one of the classic examples is the Del Creder agent, right? You would have studied about the Del Creder agent in accountancy in our foundation and CPT, wherein the agent takes the liability in case payments are not forthcoming, right? He is expressly agreeing to be liable to the principal, right? So if the Del Creder agent takes the liability for non-payment of dues, right? In similar manner, the agent may expressly undertake by word spoken or by written to take the liability in case of contract, right? It may be for his principal or maybe for the third party, as the case may be. Like in Del Creder agent is a good example to cite when we are discussing about the agent expressly agreeing. Obviously he takes a Del Creder commission, an extra commission, but he expressly the agent expressly takes the liability, right? And now the second instance where we can find such a thing is covered under section 230. Yeah, 230 it is. When the agent acts for a foreign principal The agent acts for a foreign principal, right? See, I'll just take up a very quick example over here, a very small and quick example. See, there's one Mr. Sir, right? There is one Mr. Varad, right? And there is one Mr. Som. Som is, let us say, a US citizen, right? And Mr. Varad and Sir are Indian, and Mr. Varad is agent of Som, a foreign principal, right? So when there is an agent of a foreign principal, it is much easier for me. Let us say I sell the goods worth 5 crores, Som doesn't pay. Filing a suit on Som is much difficult. Rather, I would file a suit on Varad in order to recover my amount of money, and later on Varad then can claim it from Som. So for me, it is much easier to file a suit on an Indian agent rather than trace the foreign principal and try to get the money from him. So over here, when the agent is acting for a foreign principal, obviously he is at a greater risk. Yes, he can come out of that risk by expressly putting it in the agreement that in case of any kind of a liability that arises, right? So over here, the third party may not file a suit on the agent, right? So over here, Som is the principal. I'm just writing it in order to avoid any confusion. Varad is the agent of Som, right? So the Varad may, when entering into an agreement with the third party, Varad may very clearly state that in case of any kind of an issue, I wouldn't be liable. But if there is no statement given, or if there is no clause which is included, then the agent who is acting for a foreign principal can be made liable by the third party, right? So that is one scenario. So acting for a foreign principal can be a little bit dangerous. Now, coming to the next part of the story, the third point, and that is why the law is allowed. It becomes much more easier for a third party to deal with the Indian agent rather than the foreign principal and extract money out of him. So over here, it is the law is trying to secure the Indian resident over here. Now, when the agent acts for an undisclosed principal, this is huge. When the agent acts for an undisclosed principal, now we have to learn a few things before we go ahead into undisclosed principal, the doctrine of undisclosed principal and stuff. See, the relation between the principal and the agent and the third party, the liabilities and the rights are based on three things, right? The liabilities and rights are based on three things. Thing number one, see, there can be three types of principals. One is named principal. The second one is unnamed principal. Third one is undisclosed principal. So we can have basically three types of principal agent relation, or keeping in view the third party, there can be three categories under which we can discuss it. Named principal is the common instance where the agent acts on behalf of a disclosed principal. Very simply stating it, that let us say sir goes to buy 5,000 kgs of wheat. I repeat, it's wheat, right? And when sir goes to, let us say, Mr. Varad, a third party, I say I'm acting as the agent of Mr. Ayush. So Mr. Ayush is the boss, I am the agent, and I am going to Varad in order to purchase 5,000 kgs of wheat. Very, very simple, right? That is the case of named principal. What is the case of unnamed principal, right? Where the agent states that he is acting as an agent but does not disclose identity of the principal, right? So sir is Ayush's agent, goes to Varad, says I'm acting as an agent, but I'll not tell whose agent, and I want to purchase 5,000 kgs of wheat. So that is termed as unnamed principal. You are saying that I'm an agent, but you are not disclosing who the principal is, right? उसको हम लोग unnamed principal बोलते हैं, right? Not naming the principal. You're saying that you are an agent of a person, but who, you're not saying that, right? Undisclosed principal sounds very similar to unnamed principal, but there is a catch. Let us go into the legal terminology of an undisclosed principal. When not only the fact when not only the fact that the identity of the principal is hidden, but also the fact that the person is acting as an agent is not revealed. Let's try to understand what is written over here. Not only the fact that the identity of the principal is hidden, but also the fact that the person is acting as an agent is not revealed. Then, so what do we mean by this? Sir goes to Varad in order to procure 5,000 kgs of wheat. He doesn't say he's an agent, more of he pretends to be a principal. We call this a case of pretended principal. उसको हम लोग टेक्निकली बोलते हैं undisclosed principal. See, there's a major difference between unnamed principal. Unnamed principal, you say that the agent states that he's acting as an agent, right? The agent states that he's acting as an agent, right? But over here, he pretends to be a principal. That is one important thing that you need to keep in mind. So when you're dealing, in case of unnamed principal, when you're dealing with the agent, you know he's an agent, but you don't know who the principal is. In undisclosed principal, this guy is acting and feigning to and behaving like a principal, and you believe that he himself is the boss. So when Varad asks me who you are working for, I'm say I'm my own boss, right? A lot of swag attached to it, but the fact is that I am acting as an agent which I've not disclosed. So my principal, when I say undisclosed, it means that I've hidden the fact that I'm an agent. Moreover, I've behaved like a principal, right? So neither the identity of the principal is disclosed, and also it has been portrayed like that I am the boss and I am the principal, right? So in case of, let us write this down. In case of an agent acting for an undisclosed या राइट्स लायबिलिटीज का बहुत बड़ा लिस्ट है रिगार्डिंग named principal, unnamed principal, and undisclosed principal. But we would be dealing with undisclosed some part only. It's huge, right? So in case of an agent acting for an undisclosed principal, the third party the third party the party I'm meaning the third party can, if the principal is disclosed. So on latter date, I say to Varad that I'm acting as the agent of Ayush, or Ayush himself comes up and tells Varad, or Varad gets a notice from or an information from outside. So the third party can, if the principal is disclosed, sue the agent or the principal or both. Generally rule होता है क्या, that the third party can sue the principal and not the agent. But over here, as the agent acted oversmart and showed and displayed himself as a person who is pretending to be a principal, he says, no, I'm my own boss, right? That's why the rule says the third party can, if the principal is disclosed, sue the agent, the principal, or both, right? And if the principal is not disclosed, then obviously he will sue the agent because he believes that this guy is the boss, so I'm dealing with him. So in that case, only the agent gets sued. And if the principal gets disclosed, the agent, the principal, or both can be sued. So over here, the idea is very clear that the agent can become personally liable in case if he's acting for an undisclosed principal, right? So let me quickly jot down this example. So we have Sir, agent of Ayush. Ayush is the principal. Sir is the agent, right? And what we have over here, Varad. We have Varad over here. Varad is who? Varad is the third party, right? So over here, Sir, we have Sir on one hand, we have Varad on the other hand. Right now, Sir is pretending to be the principal, right? And in for that purposes, Sir has purchased 5,000 kgs of wheat, right? Sir has purchased 5,000 kgs of wheat from Varad. Money is not forthcoming. Can Varad sue Sir? Yes, in case of undisclosed principal, the agent can be sued. If Varad comes to know that Ayush is the boss and Sir was just pretending to be the principal, he can either sue Ayush or can sue Sir or can sue both. Right? So this is the doctrine of undisclosed principal. It's pretty huge. We are just covering one aspect, the agent's liability over here. Right? Now going on to the next point. So that is one instance where the agent can be held personally liable. Going on to the next point, when the agent acts in his own name. We learned the fact that the agent should not act in his own name, right? So if the agent acts in his own name, then he can be made personally liable for the same. Right. So let us say Sir instructed, sorry, Sir instructed his agent Ishika to purchase a plot of land, right, from, let us say, one Miss Priyal. One Miss Priyal. Now, this is not a case of undisclosed principal. Ishika goes and purchases the property herself for her own benefit and then wanted to cheat Sir, right? So हमने अभी भी एक केस पढ़ा था. So this can be Priyal spelling, maybe, not sure, right? So which way it works? So we'll keep one spelling only in place. So Ishika wanted to purchase the property in her own name and then sell it to Sir at a higher price. Bad intentions, very good. The law of karma pays. She purchased the property from Priyal for rupees 20 lakhs and now she is not able to pay it. So over here, it is not a case of undisclosed principal. I told Ishika to purchase the property, right? And she wants to purchase in her own name for the purpose of benefit, or later on, let us say Ishika may go to the next level of cheating and say that, sir, the property is not available, and she purchases in her own name, right? Because she wants that property and she wants to benefit out of it, or wants to purchase that house and stay in it. Whatever be her intentions are not good. So over here, Ishika purchased the property from Priyal, and she may tell sir, the property is already sold, right? And she can keep the property. But what happened? She acted in her own name, right? Not as the agent, and she purchased the property from Priyal for 20 lakh rupees. Now she's unable to pay Priyal 20 lakh rupees. So whom will Priyal file a suit on? Obviously, Priyal will file a suit on Ishika over here. Ishika says, no, I'm not liable, sir is liable. I said, this entire transaction I'm unaware of. You could have told me, I could have directly entered into the transaction, right? So that didn't happen. So Ishika, instead of acting as my agent, acted in her own name for her own benefit. Now let her pay for her own karmas, right? Now coming to the next point, when the agent can be made personally liable. When the agent is acting when agent is acting for a person not capable of contracting, not capable of contracting, right? So there can be a list of minors, unsound people, persons disqualified by law. So it can be minor, persons of unsound mind, or people disqualified by law. If you are acting as an agent of any one of these, then you can be held personally liable, because the rules of principle say, if I recollect it very clearly, section 183 says that a person, in order to become principal, should be capable of contracting. So if there is a principal who is not capable of contracting, the primary liability, instead of, I'll just write it over here, the primary liability shifts to the agent, right? So the agent directly becomes primarily liable under the contract if he enters into a contract for persons who are not capable of contracting, right? Pretty simple on that front, right? Now the next one, when the agent can be made personally liable, when the agent acts for a principal not in existence. Oh, this is pretty cool, right? So you're acting as an agent for a principal who is not in existence. So principal not in existence. Mm, principal not in existence. प्रिंसिपल नॉट इन एग्जिस्टेंस, अब ये कैसे पॉसिबल हो सकता है? चलिए एक एग्जांपल लेते हैं, and it has a deep linkage to the Companies Act as well as the Specific Relief Act. Let us try and do this example. Let us say sir is in process of incorporating a company. Sir is in process of incorporating a company. Right. Great. Now, sir goes to one Miss Priyal furniture wale to purchase certain furniture. Purchase furniture. For whom? For myself? No, not for myself, but for the company that is getting incorporated. Right. So we have learned that the promoters of the company are nothing but natural agents of the company, right? So the company is in the process of being incorporated, so I purchase furniture from Priyal. Later on, let us say, let me add more masala to this one, right? Later on, the company, after coming into being, this masala is not added by me, this is an exam question. Later on, the company, after coming into being, ratifies the contract, right? Yani company subsequently adopts the contract, and the company is unable to pay. So Priyal files a suit on Sir. Sir says, no, the transaction has been adopted by my principal. Who is the principal? The company, the newly formed company. The company is the principal. So the principal has adopted the transaction. Now you cannot file a suit on me. So one of the rules of a valid ratification says that a valid ratification cannot be made by a principal who did not exist at the time of formation of the contract. Now try to recollect, guys. One thing that we very clearly remember is that when a contract is ratified, it gets into being from the date of contract or from the date of ratification. Jaldi bol do bhai. Ana क्या है आंसर? From the date of contract and not from the date of ratification. यानी रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव एप्लीकेबिलिटी होता है ratification का. Ratification has retrospective impact, right? So the ratification has retrospective impact, and one of the rules of ratification, valid ratification, says that a valid ratification cannot be made by a principal who did not exist at the time of formation of the contract. See, the principal was there at the time of ratification but did not exist at the time of formation of the contract, right? So the thing is very, very clear over here that such kind of ratification is not proper ratification as per the rules of the Contract Act. Hence, Priyal over here can file a suit on Sir, right? So Priyal can file a suit on Sir, right? So that is well understood that Priyal can file a suit on Sir, though the contract has been adopted subsequently by the company because the principal was not in existence. So in this case, so if the agent has acted for a principal not in existence, then the agent is himself personally liable. One more thing that I would like to take over here before I go ahead is please read the case Kellner versus Baxter, right? It's a must read. Kellner versus Baxter. Now it's a very similar case, and along with this, I would recommend a read of the Specific Relief Act. Till I recollect, sections 18 and 19 of the Specific Relief Act says a valid ratification can be made by company. So this is going against the Contract Act, subject to certain guidelines being fulfilled, that the promoter has acted for the company, he acted in good faith for the purpose of setting up of the enterprise, right? And there is no ulterior motive involved, all that blah blah blah. There are a number of points that Specific Relief Act says if they are fulfilled, then a valid ratification can be made and the promoter cannot himself be made liable. This is a very, very, very important question from the perspective of the Companies Act. Please read it. I request you to read it. It's very, very important, right? So that is one thing that we discuss over here. Now, next point talks about something little different. Again, we'll try to figure out where the agent is personally liable. Here we talk about when the agent exceeds his authority. See, whenever we talk about authority, we would be inquiring as to which kind of authority it is, express, implied. So there's one best way to understand when you talk about authority. Always assume that we mean ostensible authority. What is an ostensible authority? The authority which a third party can reasonably presume that the agent would be having in the ordinary course of business, where the business at the place where the business is carried out. So that is what ostensible authority is all about. Now that is, as I explained, the largest scope of authority, ostensible authority. Now coming to the part where the agent exceeds his authority, right? I'll be taking up two cases. One, the easier one, I'll start with. Let us say there is Sir's driver, Mr. X. So there's a relation of master and servant, right? Sir's driver sells his car to Abhirami, right? So we have one party known as Abhirami. So Sir's car to Abhirami. This guy is my driver. See, I'm a poor chap. This is all completely cooked up stories. In first place, I don't have a car. In case I would have one, I couldn't afford a chauffeur for it. So let's get on with the case rather than talking about my sad story. Now, sir has a car and a driver sells the car to Abhinami over here. So did this guy, do driver in the regular course of things sell the car of the owners? No, they're supposed to drive. There's a relation of master and servant. There's nothing to do with authority to sell the car. So over here, Abhinami paid an advance. Say Abhinami paid rupees 2 lakh in advance. I'm not willing to give the car. So over here, is Mr. X liable? Yes. Mr. X is liable to repay the advance. Right? So over here it is his personal liability because he acted outside the scope of his authority. Now coming to a more complex case, this one is a wonderful case. Right? Now, sir wants a loan. He went to different banks and none of the bank managers gave me the loan. I wanted a loan of rupees 2.5 crores and the bank managers say they have a maximum limit of 1 crore and that is what the banking norms are saying. Right. Then I later on meet one Mr. Shanmugam. Right. So I go to one bank manager, Shanmugam, and Shanmugam says to me, yes, I will get that 2.5 crore of loan. So I receive a loan of rupees 2.5 crore. Now the thing is that sir had a reason to believe, sir had a reason to believe that the manager is acting outside the scope of his authority. The fact was that yes, Shanmugam also had a ceiling limit of 1 crore for passing the loan. So over here, Shanmugam went outside the scope of his authority and passed a greater loan amount of 2.5 crore rupees over here. So did the agent, see the manager over here, the manager of a bank or an insurance company, the actual case Baines was saving of insurance company. So the manager of an insurance company or be it be a bank is nothing but the agent of the institute. So he's acting outside the scope of his authority, and section 228 talks about it not being separable, then God help you, right? So the agent would be personally liable in case of any default with the loan. And in the first case, they wouldn't they would try to stop the loan, but over here I have said that I have received the money, right? I have received the money, the loan amount, somehow I managed it, right? You know, a lot of frauds can happen and you would be reading about them nowadays. So over here the manager can be made personally liable. So Mr. Shanmugam is personally liable for the loan, right? If Shanmugam is unable to pay, we'll attach his property, don't worry, we'll file a suit on him. So over here what do we notice in this case? that when the agent exceeds his authority, and generally we talk about the ostensible authority, the actual authority was 1 crore. I had a reason to believe that the manager is acting outside the scope of his authority, because I've tried and tested with very many banks, and I figured out that the managers do not have an authority beyond 1 crore. You have to seek higher level approvals from 2-3 branch heads or vice presidents and stuff. So over here, it has been crystal clear that I had no reason. What do you mean by ostensible authority? Ostensible authority is what a third party can reasonably presume the agent to have in the ordinary course of business. I had no reason to believe that, and hence he acted outside the scope of his ostensible authority. The principal can shrug off the liability. If I try to act smart, they may shout at me also, because they can tell me that you had no reason, you had no substantial ground to believe, right? And more than that, he is our agent, we'll make him liable for whatever we want, right? So I better get lost out of the scene, right? Are we clear? So ऊपर वाला case देखो, driver selling the car. Over here, a manager, the authority of whom generally is known to be within 1 crore, passed a loan of 2.5 crores. So are good enough examples. When the agent acts outside or exceeds the scope of his authority, then the agent can be made liable for such transaction, right? Fair enough. Next point उठाते हैं. अभी चालू ही है, don't worry, it will keep going, regarding the liability of the agent. So next time, when there is custom and usage of trade making the agent personally liable, making the agent personally liable, right? Now coming on to this one, well, best example is stock markets. Right. See, let us say sir has an account with, say, XYZ brokers. Right? The brokerage house, they are our agents. So I am the principal. The brokerage house is the agent. Right? So sir is the principal and the brokerage house is the agent over here. And sir is an account with the brokerage house. Sir asks the brokerage house to sell 500 shares of Reliance Industries Limited. Right? Sir asks the brokerage house to sell 500 shares of Reliance Industries Limited. Right? Sir actually only had 50 shares. Sir had 50 shares. There's a mistake on my part to tell the brokerage house to sell 500 shares. They sell the shares, and later on, because there is a shortfall, the buyer, whosoever has bought it, so let us say Mr. A bought the shares. Shortfall of 450 shares. Can Mr. A directly take action against the brokers? The answer is yes. Later on, the broker will charge the money from me, but at the first instance, in the stock market, see, the transactions are so large, there are so many buyers and sellers every day, lakhs of crores of transactions take place. So you cannot directly identify who the seller was. Yahan, in this case, sir was the seller, so you cannot identify it so easily. So you can, yes, identify the broking house. There are a few broking houses and they have thousands and lakhs of clients joining them, right? So they buy and sell through the broking houses. So directly, if action is to be taken, it is to be taken against the broking houses. That is what the custom is in the stock market. So there is custom in usage of trade, making the agent, the broker in this case, personally liable. So that is a wonderful real life example that we'll be discussing. We'll be taking up the broking houses later on also in one of the examples much later, right? Now the next point is when there is an agency coupled with interest. Coupled with interest. One thing I want you to star mark this big time, right? Agency coupled with interest, one of the most important points, and there will be a lot of cases on this one in exams. So first of all, let us write a note on what do you mean by agency coupled with interest, and then we'll try to deconstruct the note. When at the time, likhiye, change the pen. When at the time, section 202, when at the time of formation of contract, when the time of formation of contract of agency and interest in favor of agent is created, then the agency is termed as one coupled with interest and cannot be revoked, right? तो ये एक irrevocable agency करके आता है, उसके अंदर 3 parts है. This is the most important one. Agency coupled with interest when at the time of the formation of the contract, at the time of the formation, so at or before भी चलेगा, at the time of formation of the contract, an interest in favor of agent is created, then the agency is termed with one coupled with interest. बहुत अच्छी बात. Let us try to understand what the poet wants to say, right? Now agency coupled with interest, let us take one example. I'll take 2 examples over here. Example number 1, right? So sir is there and there is one, say, Miss Rajita, right? So there is one sir and one Miss Rajita. Over here, sir gave certain goods to Rajita to be sold. So sir has become the principal and Rajita has become the agent, right? So sir gave goods worth rupees, say, 5 lakh to Rajita to be sold, right? लेटर ऑन, या हम लोग लिखेंगे let us mark it by dates. When the goods were given, goods given say on 5th April. Then later on, Rajita extends a loan to Sir worth rupees 1 lakh. Right. So this is say on 15th of April. Right. So on 5th of April, goods were given by Sir to Miss Rajita, and later on 15th of April, Rajita extends a loan to Sir worth 1 lakh rupees. On the work of selling the goods have not started yet, my dear friends. On say 20th of April, Sir sends a notice to cancel the contract of agency and demand the goods back. Demand the goods back. R withholds the goods and sells them she further must case she further Smart versus Sanders is the case. She further recovers the loan amount she further recovers the loan amount and commission the rest amount is paid back to सर. ये मस्त वाला केस है, सुपर मस्त केस, राइट? तो over here, has she done right is my question, right? Because this is a very very famous case. Let me write over here the name of the case, right? ये है स्मार्ट वर्सेस सैंडर्स, जैसे मैंने बताया था आपको, स्मार्ट वर्सेस सैंडर्स, right? Now Smart versus Sanders. Now let us take party by party and try to understand what Rajita's contention was and what Sir's contention was. क्या झगड़ा हो गया, अब यहाँ समझने की ट्राई करते हैं. That, see over here, the loan happened on a latter date, right? यहाँ डेफिनेशन क्या दिया हुआ है, और एक मैं आपको यहाँ बता दूं कि the interest in favor of agent is created. No, not at all. So let us try and understand what is the contention of the parties over here. These are, see, 5th April, the goods were given. 15th April, R extends loan. The agent extends the loan, but that is in a different capacity altogether, right? So these are to be treated as two separate transactions, two separate transactions, right? So now Rajita over here very clearly states that why she withheld the good. So if question is asked as to why she withheld the goods, the answer is pretty simple over here. She would say that I have given a 1 lakh loan. So if you treat it as advance, a part of the goods belong to me. See, out of goods worth 5 lakh, 1 lakh is my goods and 4 lakh is your goods. That is her reply to sir, right? She further recovers the loan amount. She sells the goods, recovers the loan amount, the commission, and the rest amount is paid back. See, an agent has a right very much to keep and withhold the commission amount or anything that is to be received by him, and then further the rest of the amount for a given transaction. But over here, when sir wanted to cancel the contract by sending a notice on 20th of April, why on earth she went ahead and sold the goods? ये एकदम गलत बात है. Her contention is that it is agency coupled with interest, right? So what do you mean by agency coupled with interest? That an interest in favor of the agent is created. But I say, bacha, balak, the problem over here is it should be at the time of formation of the contract, right? So this 1 lakh rupee, the so-called amount that you are talking about, right, being the interest, is technically created after the agency contract came into being. So it does not fit into the definition of section 202, and hence there is no agency coupled with interest. So what Rajita did was completely wrong. She has to pay the full amount to sir. She has to pay the full amount to sir. What do you mean by full amount? She cannot keep that 1 lakh rupee of her loan amount, right? She has to pay the full amount and make a separate claim for लोन. तो अलग से क्लेम करना पड़ेगा. चलिए और एक एग्जांपल ले लेते हैं, छोटा सा, not as big as the Smart vs Sanders case, but this is again a beautiful example. Right. So now beginning with this example, there is sir, एक बालक है Rajita, right? Now over here, let us say Rajita gave a loan to sir on say 5th of April, loan given to sir, right? Now on 10th April, I think you have started guessing the case. On 10th April, sir gave goods to Rajita. April, sir gave goods to Rajita to be sold, right? And asked Rajita that you sell the goods and recover your loan amount. Sell the goods and recover the लोन अमाउंट. मैंने बोला बेटा ये पैसे आप रिकवर कर लो by selling the goods, and she was fine with it, and then you take the commission, give the money to me. On before the selling process could start, on 20th April, sir gave notice of revocation Right. Now, is this revocation a valid one? Not valid revocation. Right. अब ये समझने की ट्राई करते ये हुआ क्या. Right. Not valid revocation. Now, sir gave certain boxes of goods. Right. Then, sir gave certain boxes of goods over here to Rajita. Right. So, sir gave these goods to Rajita. That happened on which date? Right? On 10th April. Loan was given on 5th April. So, at the time of formation of the contract, when it is well understood that Rajita has to sell the goods and recover the loan amount, take her commission and give back the money. So, can we very happily say that the goods over here technically both belong to Rajita as well as Sir Rajita does have a part interest in the So can we say Rajita does have a part interest in the goods? Yes. So technically the goods do not solely belong to Sir. Right? So if the goods do not solely belong to Sir, how can Sir cancel the contract? Now, you cannot say part cancellation of contract. Okay, 4 lakh worth of goods you give back. See, goods over here are something you can say taken in totality. So there are, let us say, 100 boxes. So which 50 or let us say there are 100 boxes, which 20 belongs to Rajita, which 80 belongs to Sir. You are unable to identify, right? So इसके लिए आपको थोड़ा सेल ऑफ गुड्स एक्ट याद करना पड़ेगा. सेल ऑफ गुड्स एक्ट जब हम लोग पढ़ते हैं, that the type of goods are specific goods, right? Ascertain goods and unascertain goods. So technically when the goods are unascertain, when they are not divided among the parties or not identified to a given person, right? You cannot say which one belongs to whom, right? So basically the idea of sale of goods run into this and states that the goods that are being given over here, so the land which has been given, let us say it instead of this 100 boxes of goods, there was a piece of land. There was 300 square feet of land, a plot, right? So how much square feet belongs to Rajita? Which part of the land? Because it's 300 square feet. So it's on the side, left hand side, the right hand side of the land, the middle of the land, the upper band of the land, the part of the plot which is close to the road does belong to her or to me. So this creates umpteen amount of confusion. So you cannot divide the transaction. That's why they say it is irrevocable agency. So over here, this is, if I recollect, Suryanarayan versus Bhushayya's case. So this is a wonderful case wherein it is termed as that the agency is coupled with interest and the agent can go ahead and sell the goods, right? The agent can go ahead and sell the goods, recover his loan amount, recover his commission and pay the rest and sell. So the entire goods, yes, my dear friend, as the has the authority to sell the entire goods as per the actual transaction. It cannot be cancelled. You don't know which goods belong to whom, right? I sold the first 80 boxes, maybe the last 20 boxes are mine. Nothing can be said. So the rule has been very simple. Rather than making it cumbersome as to what belongs to whom in terms of goods, piece of land, let him sell the entire piece of land or the goods and then recover the loan amount and repay the rest of the money which is actually bound to the principal, right? So this is termed as agency coupled with interest, section 2 not 2. Very, very, very important to say the least, right? So now after agency coupled with interest, so agency coupled with interest हम लोग कर रहे थे किस heading के अंदर, when the agent is personally liable. So over here the agent has personal liability over the goods, right? कैसे कि क्योंकि पर्सनल ओनरशिप आ गया यहाँ, अगर आप देखो तो वन वे ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग द लॉजिक इज हैविंग अ पार्ट ओनरशिप. सो द एजेंट is technically a part owner in the transaction. So when there is agency coupled with interest, it cannot be cancelled, right? And the agent is liable to sell the goods and repay the principal. Over here, what do we mean by liability? He is liable to the principal. After disposing of the goods, the rest of the money, the principal can file a suit on the agent and make him personally liable for that, right? ठीक है, तो ये हो गया हमारा agency coupled with interest, right? Now when is the agent furthermore personally liable है भाई, और एक दो पॉइंट है. When the agent has received money under mistake, he is personally liable, right? And this not falls in the ordinary course of business, right? So let us take a very filmy scenario. Sir is the agent. There is one Mr. Chirag is the agent, right? Some two different people altogether, they don't know each other, right? So sir is agent to Miss Rajita, तो ये बालक के एजेंट है हम, right? So over here there is one Mr. Sunil who had to pay money, right? So instead of paying it to Mr. Chirag, right, Mr. Sunil pays the amount to sir, right, by mistake, right? Under mistake, under misunderstanding, Mr. Sunil pays the amount to sir, right? Rajita, my boss. So I was so happy that I received the amount, right? क्योंकि I and Mr. Chirag may be looking similar and were at the same location at the time when Mr. Sunil came to pay money, and in confusion Mr. Sunil gave the money to me instead of Mr. Chirag. So over here later on Mr. Sunil cannot hold Rajita liable. This is a utter case of mistake and I am so happy receiving the money. ठीक है, गरीब आदमी के हाथ में पैसा आएगा तो खुशी होगा ना, राइट? हाँ ना, ठीक है. So over here is Mr. Sir liable to pay. ये मैंने बहुत पहले पढ़ा है आपको, अगर याद हो तो. ये एजेंसी में नहीं था but it was linked to section 72 of the Indian Contract Act. So if money received or thing received under mistake, right, then the person who has received is himself liable to return it back, right? तो सेक्शन 72 के साथ इसका लिंकेज है, ठीक है. So this is very, very simple. Rajita cannot be held liable, the boss cannot be held liable, the agent is liable in this case. Now coming to another point where the agent can be made personally liable. So sir has to pay to one Mr. Sunil, right? अब लास्ट आते हैं, yes लास्ट ही आते हैं अब तो, that when, ये भी हमने किया हुआ है, when the act, not long ago we have done it now, in the act of the pretended agent is not ratified, right? When the act of the pretended agent is not ratified, let us say sir tries to act over smart, right? Goes to one Mr. Shanmugam and says that I want to purchase say 1000 kgs wheat nahi bhai, rice. It's not wheat this time, it's rice. So I say I want to purchase 1000 kgs of rice, basmati chawal, right? Deal at rupees 175 a kg, very expensive, right? So deal at 175 a kg. I tried to act this smart guy, right? And I go to Ishika, very big dealer of rice, and say that I've got a very good deal for you, and I have pretended that I'm your agent. So acted as pretended agent of Ishika, right? So sir acted as pretended agent of Ishika, and Shanmugam was very impressed, coming from a very big party. तो भाई सेल कर देते हैं. So he entered into the transaction. Later on, the fun part is I said the principal, the so-called principal, can either ratify. If ratifies, then the transaction is accepted. From which date भाई बोल दो, याद करो, from the date of contract or date of ratification? The answer is, ठीक है, the answer is date of contract. But if Ishika denies, right? If Ishika denies, stating that nahi, I'm not interested in the transaction, I give up the transaction. So over here, let us say Mr. Shanmugam wants to go through the transaction and he says, you have to give me the money. I've taken the delivery of rice over here. So is sir personally liable? Yes. Yes, the agent is personally liable for the contract. Right, the agent is personally liable for the contract. So this brings us to the end of the list when the agent is personally liable. Right, that's a huge list. Let us quickly scroll through the list. Right, so the liability of the agent, if we try and understand this, at least some bit of visibility would be required. Right, so see, the agent cannot be held personally liable for the transactions, right, under certain exceptional circumstances. So the first one is, list of exceptional circumstances is huge. First one is when the agent expressly agrees to be liable for the contract, right? Second, when he acts as the agent of a foreign principal, so there is a good chance that if that foreign principal doesn't pay, you're gone, right? When the agent acts for an undisclosed principal, we discussed it in detail. Now this we discussed in detail, right? The named principal, the unnamed principal, and the undisclosed principal, right? So that is one case wherein we notice that when the agent is acting for an undisclosed principal, when the agent acts in his own name, right? So when he acts that double smart, then the agent is liable.